In 2022, a study using 2020 FBI crime data revealed that New Mexico had the second highest rates of violent crime of any US state. Further information showed that it has an abysmally poor clearance rate over the last few years of just over 30% between 2019 and 2021. Unfortunately, for those of us in the true crime community, this isn't new information. Some of the most well-known unsolved cases in our whole community come from New Mexico, including the West Mesa slayings and the vanishing of Tara Calico. In today's episode, however, we aim to shed light on some lesser-known cases from the state as we explore 3 disturbing unsolved disappearances from New Mexico. Pepita Redhair. Pepita Redhair was a proud member of the Navajo Nation and a woman who enjoyed art and skateboarding when she suddenly vanished in 2020. A student at the University of New Mexico, Pepita spent her time working at a Hot Topic store in Albuquerque and was aiming to one day become a teacher or an engineer. Her uncharacteristic disappearance has left her family with endless questions and no answers. On March 24, 2020, 27-year-old Pepita left her mother's residence in Crown Point to see her partner, Nicholas Kay, who was living in Albuquerque. At some point in the afternoon, she met up again with her mother, Anita. They had lunch together at McDonald's, and Anita dropped her daughter off once more at Nicholas's before driving to her own home. She thought nothing of it as she waved Pepita off and told her goodbye. She had no idea this would be the last time she would see her daughter. According to Nicholas, the pair went out for drinks on the evening of March 26th, 2 days after she was last seen by her mother. While they were out, they met up with another man whose identity has not been made public. Nicholas told investigators that he and Pepita got into an argument that night at a party they were attending, and that the last time he saw her was when she walked out of the house where the party was being held. The residence is located in northeast Albuquerque. While this was the last time Nicholas saw his girlfriend, it was not the last time he heard from her. He reportedly received a text from Pepita the following day, which explained she was with another man. Nicholas believes that this is the same man the pair met up with at the party, and this is the last time that anyone heard from Pepita. The text message, however, has not been publicly confirmed by the police. A missing persons report for Pepita was filed by her mother, Anita, on March 28th, 4 days after she had last seen her daughter. Over the last few days, she'd attempted to call and text Pepita, but had heard nothing back, sparking her concern, which eventually escalated to alarm. 2 days after filing the missing persons report, Anita received a text message from her daughter's phone. The text explained that they had purchased the mobile phone from someone, indicating the device had been stolen. Anita recalled, "Friday the 27th, I tried calling her. I tried texting her. My intuition right away told me something was wrong. I tried on Monday the 30th again. I tried texting her, but that's when her phone was stolen." Frustratingly, the police were initially incredibly unhelpful as Anita filed the report. The Albuquerque Police Department explained that as Pepita was an adult, she was able to go wherever she wanted and didn't have to report to her mother if she didn't want to. They also added that Anita would need to work with the Crown Point Navajo Police Department instead of the Albuquerque PD because Pepita was from their jurisdiction, despite the fact that the 27-year-old had been living with Nicholas in Albuquerque when she vanished. Anita also claimed that the department considered her daughter a drunk and believed she was homeless, and therefore didn't take the case seriously. While Pepita frequently traveled between her family's home in Crown Point and her partner's in Albuquerque, she officially lived with Nicholas, had all of her belongings there, and had been residing with him for 3 years. Nicholas, for his part, didn't report Pepita missing until April 19th, almost an entire month after her disappearance. It is unclear why he didn't contact the authorities sooner, but a possible motive came to light when Albuquerque PD stated that there was a domestic history with the boyfriend. They added that they were checking into it. More disturbingly still, Pepita's sister, Shelda, alleged that her sister, quote, is a domestic violence victim and was beaten just days before she vanished. While she did not explicitly state who beat her, the implication is very clear. Their mother, Anita, also believes Nicholas was abusive towards the 27-year-old. Nicholas has reportedly stopped cooperating with investigators. Albuquerque PD noted that the case had gone cold shortly after Pepita was reported missing, but the department was working on following up with new leads. In October of 2021, Anita, alongside friends and family members, held a rally in Albuquerque to raise awareness for her daughter's disappearance. Another was held in June of 2022. Sadly, Pepita's father passed away in 2021, without knowing what happened to his daughter. Pepita's case is still unsolved and has been labeled as cold by authorities. She was last seen by her family on March 24, 2020, as she was dropped off at her boyfriend's home in Albuquerque. Notably, her official date of disappearance is listed as March 27, 2020. Pepita is described as a Native American woman with brown hair and brown eyes. She has 2 beauty marks on her chin, stands at 5'1", and weighed around 141 pounds when she was last seen. She also has several tattoos, including a dinosaur on her right forearm, a koi fish on her left forearm, a moon with lightning on her left leg, and a butterfly on one of her shoulders, as well as her surname, Redhair, on her body. If you have any information about Pepita's disappearance, you can contact the Albuquerque PD at 505-768-2020. Or alternatively, you can call the New Mexico Department of Public Safety Missing Person Hotline at 800-457-3463. Jean A. Johnson. 70-year-old Jean A. Johnson was last seen on May 27, 2019 at 5:30 p.m. in Captain, New Mexico. She had spent her afternoon caring for a friend's dog at her residence on Towie Road while the friend was away from home on a trip. At some point that day, Jean messaged her daughter, Heidi, sending a photo of herself with the dog. This was the last time that anyone heard from her. Jean didn't speak to Heidi the following day, which was odd considering the pair often spoke multiple times each day, nor did she return the dog back to her friend's residence as they'd planned. A further day passed before Heidi decided to investigate what was happening. She went to her mother's home to check if she was okay. Upon her arrival, she discovered that Jean's driveway gate was locked. Her car, parked in the driveway, was locked too. Her handbag and phone could be seen inside the vehicle. Turning to her mother's home, Heidi noticed that the front door was ajar, but when she stepped inside, nothing was out of place. There was no trace of Jean inside the house, but her friend's dog was still there. The canine had several accidents as a result of not being let outside. Heidi recalled, "Everything looked normal, except the dog she was watching had some accidents. She would never have just left him there long enough for that to happen. My mother was very clean and kept things clean. And also, she just loved that dog." Strangely, Jean's handgun, a .357 pistol, was the only thing missing from the house. The 70-year-old used it for protection against intruders and wildlife, as she lived in a remote location where mountain lions were known to sometimes wander near houses. While the missing gun had initially prompted law enforcement to consider the possibility that Jean had taken her own life, it was turned in to the police 2 months after her disappearance by an individual who has not been publicly identified. This led the authorities to rule out the suicide theory. Investigators carried out a thorough search of Jean's 10-acre property, which involved using a helicopter, drones, and scent dogs, but no clues as to her whereabouts were recovered. According to Heidi, Jean was occasionally forgetful, but had no history of wandering off. She was also not known to have any enemies. She lived a simple and quiet life, where she enjoyed working in her garden and spending time with her family and friends. She lived alone and had not entered a relationship since her husband's death in 2012. Heidi recalled, she had met someone, but then would say, "He's not your father," adding, "They were so in love." Jean always wore a pendant around her neck, which contained her late husband's ashes. Lincoln County Sheriff Robert Shepard told NBC that Jean's disappearance is a pretty difficult case. He later noted, "This isn't a typical investigation for us. When it's a missing person, by this time they're either found somewhere at a family member's house or maybe in a hospital somewhere." Heidi grew so concerned by the lack of answers in her mother's case that she contacted psychics who told her she's buried not too far off the road, but we have no idea where. Heidi makes regular searches for her mother, using horses and ATVs to help cover more ground. But still, there has been no trace of the 70-year-old. 5 months after her disappearance, investigators stated that they were still pursuing evidence, and that while they have no physical evidence which indicated that Jean was harmed or taken, they suspect that something criminal occurred. At one point, they also noted that they were organizing search warrants, but it's unclear what or who they were investigating, and what the outcome of their inquiry was. There has been virtually no movement in the case since 2019. 70-year-old Jean A. Johnson was last seen in Captain on May 27, 2019. She is described as a white woman with graying brown hair and green eyes. She stands at 5'6" and weighed 130 pounds when she was last seen. Jean also has had a mastectomy on her left breast, has previously fractured one of her big toes, and has pierced ears. It is unknown what she was wearing when she went missing, but she is known to religiously wear her silver wedding band with 3 diamonds and a clear glass pendant containing her late husband's ashes. If you have any information about Jean's disappearance, you can contact the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office at 575-648-2341. Debra Lansdell. 29-year-old Debbie Lansdell was last seen at 2 a.m. on September 21, 1985, when she left her boyfriend's apartment to head home. Newly divorced, Debbie was a hard-working nurse and had her own small apartment on Gerrales Road in Belen. She had recently purchased a used Porsche 924, and her family described her as a fun individual who was very serious about her career. 2 days later, on September 23rd, Debbie failed to show up for work and she was reported missing. Law enforcement was dispatched to her apartment, where they discovered that the door was ajar, but there were no signs of foul play within its walls. Furthermore, nothing appeared to be missing or out of place. Debbie's Porsche, however, was gone from its parking spot. Investigators reportedly told the 29-year-old's mother that most women leave of their own accord, but something didn't sit right with the family about her disappearance. She had just started a fresh, new chapter of her life and appeared to be in good spirits. They were confused as to why she would leave again. In the months following the disappearance, Debbie's case received very little media coverage. This is often seen as odd, given that Debbie was a white, blonde-haired, attractive woman, the kind of woman who often receives far more attention from the media than any other. It wasn't until months later, in January of 1986, that her case came to light again, after the disappearance and subsequent murder of 22-year-old Linda D. Daniels that same month. The sudden attention to Debbie's case led to an anonymous tipster informing the police that her car was parked at an apartment building at 1520 Gold Southeast in Albuquerque and had been there for several months. The vehicle had some visible dents and scratches that had not been present before the disappearance. However, the car provided no new evidence, and there were no signs of foul play. Dark-colored stains on the back seat were briefly thought to be blood, but testing proved otherwise. 1 year later, in January of 1987, remains were discovered in Belen. Children playing in a pit behind Elks Lodge in the northern portion of the city discovered a skull believed to belong to a woman. There was much speculation that the skeletal body belonged to Debbie, but they were soon proven to be ancient Native American remains, and investigators were placed firmly back on square one. In August of 1988, Valencia County Sheriff Lawrence Ramiro stated that his office was reopening Debbie's case and promised they would take a hard look at some new leads. He was reportedly confident that a break in the case would come, and that the disappearance would be solved once and for all. The case had been turned over to state police 2 years earlier, and upon hearing about the reopening, State Police Sergeant Herman Silver stated that it had never been closed or cold, and that he was unaware of the new leads Sheriff Ramiro was talking about. Notably, just 1 month after Debbie's case was reopened, Tara Calico went missing. Her disappearance took over newspaper headlines, and the vanishing of a 29-year-old nurse living in Belen went largely forgotten. In December of 1988, 4 months after the reopening, skeletal remains were discovered by hunters in the Sandia Mountains. The skull was missing its wisdom teeth, and the remains overall were believed to be from a woman in her early 30s who had passed between 2 and 4 years before. Detectives began to believe that this was Debra Lansdell. However, eventually, dental comparisons were done between the two, and it was determined that they were not a match. The remains were later identified as belonging to Holly Harris, a 22-year-old who disappeared in September of 1976. Little information is available in Holly's case, but her death was not treated as suspicious by authorities. Another female skull was discovered in July of 1991 in Valencia County, off the Manzano Expressway, but it was found not to belong to Debbie. It also did not belong to Tara Calico, although it was briefly suspected to have been hers. The skull contained 2 holes, possibly made by bullets from a .22 caliber weapon, and was likely from a young girl or young boy between 13 and 14 years of age. No additional bones were found at the scene, and it is unclear if it was ever determined who the skull belonged to. Debbie's case is still unsolved. There has been little progress made throughout the entire investigation, and she appears to have been forgotten over time. 29-year-old Debra Lansdell has been missing since September 21, 1985, and was last seen in Belen, New Mexico. She is described as a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her height and weight are listed as 5'6" and 120 pounds. No other distinguishing characteristics are available, and it is unknown what clothing she was wearing at the time of her disappearance. Her car, a rust-colored 1978 Porsche 924, was discovered on the 1500 block of Gold Southeast in Albuquerque in February of 1986, 5 months after she went missing. If you have any information about Debbie's disappearance, you can contact the Valencia County Sheriff's Department at 505-866-2400. And there you have the facts. Please leave a comment down below with your own thoughts and speculations, and remember to like this video and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.